All right, Zach, I'm teaching Sunday school.
Okay, yeah.
Next week.
Nice.
And it's delighting in differences.
Okay.
And one of those things are planning versus not planner.
Okay, cool.
Are you a planner or not planner? And I think a lot of people think that people who quote unquote are not planners are kind of lazy. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But
you need to defend yourself. Yeah.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
What I would say is some people find comfort in leaving their options open.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But some people feel comfort in knowing what's going to happen. Like if we don't know what's going to happen, I don't feel comfort about that.
I understand
and
that,
some people are like, man, if we plan 3 weeks out in advance, maybe something better comes along the line. And now it's harder to switch up type of thing. So the planner of all planners that I'm aware of is my mother-in-law.
Okay. Got shout out.
She asks for my kids' Christmas wish list like in August or September.
Dude, that's amazing.
It's crazy. To the point of they'll put together a list, they'll give it to her, she'll buy it, wrap it, and then forget what she got them.
That's pretty cool. It's like Christmas for her. She's excited to see what they're going to open.
That's right. So the last 2 years, and we're trying to figure out how to get around this. Like November timeframe, we'll see. All right, kids, what's your Christmas list? Well, this is one I gave Juju. Okay, Juju, what did you get? Honestly, I don't remember. And we're like, how do we get gifts off of this Christmas? We could just go out on our own and get stuff. But it's like, how do we buy stuff without knowing whether? Because I think 2 or 3 years ago, we did duplicate something.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And so we're like, so this will be the second year in a row. We're trying to figure out how to not do this next year. We're having what we're calling second Christmas.
I like it.
So basically we told the kids before Christmas, like, we know one thing that we got one of you, but really we don't know what to get because we don't know what Juju got you.
You don't know.
And so let's go to Arkansas. Let's have Christmas there. You can update your Christmas list after that and then give us a update Christmas list. And so we're finally getting around to
I like that.
Yeah.
That's nice because it's like Christmas is, I wouldn't say it's too much, but it's kind of too much.
Yeah.
Especially like my kids are so small, so their gifts are not expensive and they're getting too much at once.
Right.
Spreading it out is better. And we had like some family come in where we, could spread it out over like 4 or 5 days, and that's so much better than one day. So I like it. Just keep it going a little bit. They can appreciate.
And it makes it seems like well, it's not too far away.
It's not too far away. That's right. Yeah. Because that day after Christmas is a tough day.
It is
when you're like, I gotta wait all year.
I know. Have I told you what our family tradition is?
I think you have. I'm not remembering it.
We've probably done this as a family for 3 or 4 years now. But Chloe was doing it on her own without because like you said, it was such Christmas is so far away. She would go on December 26th, look herself in the mirror and say, Christmas will be here before you know it. And then she told us about that. And she's like, this year we should all do it. And this is probably 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. So we all get in the bathroom, look at the mirror and say, Christmas will be here before you know it.
Look yourself in the mirror and say those words. That's great. I love it. I'm excited to see what people got for second Christmas.
Yeah.
I'll have to report back, what's...
I guess I could tell you now because this would be coming
that's
out
great. Yeah, what do we get?
Yeah. Unless something crazy happens, I'll be like, don't listen to that podcast, girls.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask Chloe how it was. There's a lot of wisdom in spreading out Christmas.
Probably, yeah. Probably, yeah. That's probably a way to think about it.
That's right. So we're going to segue into this wisdom series. We're in... this is the third installment.
Third overall, second on Proverbs.
Boom.
Yeah.
Love it. So we're going to go ahead and take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina.
It's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level.
All right, Michael. Second week in Proverbs, and it was just a heavy lift in Sunday school, so couldn't do it myself. Had to call in some reinforcement.
That's right, and I listened to it and I thought, man, this guy might have a future as a teacher. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was pretty well done. I was impressed.
He did very, very well. Great. He puts in. You can tell he puts in the work.
He doesn't listen to podcasts though. Clearly,
that's the major red flag.
I know. I told him, I was like, hey, you're dead to me. So I was trying to talk to him about the duck calls. I was like, but you don't listen, do you? Because I don't know. Sorry for the aside. Right as we're trying to launch, But I played the quote unquote bad duck call, and it didn't sound that bad.
Oh no, honestly, they all sound. I like listening to it back. I was like, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I will have to have Clayton critique them. That'll be
Yeah.
that'll be good. But we're in this wisdom series. These wisdom books: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Job. They answer some really big questions in life. We've talked about Hebrew poetry last week in the first lesson on Proverbs. Talked about Proverbs being patterns, maybe even probabilities, and we talked about this that they're not promises.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast today or this week, and the guy said, probabilities, and I don't think I would have picked up on that if we hadn't had this discussion. But he was like, probabilities, not promises, and I wouldn't say that. This might be a place where I disagree with the Coco. I wouldn't say I would say principles.
Principles,
not promises. Yeah. Because it's not like you're
flipping a coin,
gambling.
Yeah.
It's like these are general life principles.
Yeah.
Things can invade on that, but overall, if you follow these principles, you're
I like principles. I like patterns. There's like a way the world works, and I don't know if is this going to come off the heels of Romans 12, 9 through 13, or no? The way we're off a little.
Yes,
or is it? Yeah.
It will come off the heels of 9 through.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's like as pastor was preaching that sermon, just because I'm in Proverbs, I was like, man, we talked about chokmah, wisdom, godliness, and action. This is wisdom.
Right.
All these things, letting your love be sincere without hypocrisy, and being devoted to brothers and sisters in Christ, and being hopeful.
Oh wait a minute, I'm sorry.
We might have been.
It will come off of the second half of love without hypocrisy. So it'll come.
Gotcha.
It'll come after.
Still actions we can do over.
Right, leaving room for God's vengeance, loving, being kind to your neighbor. Not getting caught up in wrath. That's all still wisdom.
I think that's a great way to look at it. Where it's like, man, wise people are people. Not that I don't think it's bad to contemplate and philosophize, great stuff, but that's not like only what you do. It's like you're living life. You're doing things like that. That is so good. And so today we'll talk a little bit. We talked about this a little bit. We'll just kind of like round out maybe the rest of Proverbs a little bit. Last week we talked about the bookends, like Proverbs 1 through 9, all these poems, and then Proverbs 30 and 31. Talks a lot about fear of the Lord, wisdom, folly. You've got a couple of options. We'll finally get to some of these, short, pithy sayings. What comes to my mind when I think of Proverbs, I think of the Proverbs.
No, that's good. When you were telling Clayton what to talk, did you give him what was your instructions?
So this is great. I would encourage people to go and listen to these. I tried to leave it broad, but I've lined up a couple of different speakers in this class that are different ages. Clayton's like the young man. And I told him, speak about Proverbs or wisdom from a young man's perspective, because you get this wisdom that passed down from father to son. I think when you're young like Clayton, you look at the world and you're like, man, the world's whatever I make it. And it's like Proverbs sets these paths. I can do this or this. And if I do this, if I'm wise, I can be successful and have peace and prosperity. If I'm foolish, that leads to ruin and shame. And it's straightforward, might be the wrong word, but you choose a path and it's pretty stark.
Right.
Foreshadowing, we've got some people a little bit further along, a little bit more life experience that can look back and say, whew.
So you would say old people.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say it, and it's like, old enough to know that while Proverbs are patterns and principles, it doesn't always work out like that. There are some exceptions to the rule, and some of that is frustrating, maybe paradoxes, or we don't see the whole perspective, but kind of getting their take on wisdom too. So I kept it broad. I was like, Proverbs, and let him take it wherever he wants to, and he did a really great job.
Yeah, that's good. So where did you want to start? Did you want to give another brief intro to wisdom literature?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Well, maybe we'll do this. Let's talk about what Clayton talked about.
Okay. Yeah. So he started off, and he talked about really these three, and he broadened it afterwards because I think he threw Moses in there afterwards. These three, what we call people that really started off having everything together. Adam.
Oh yeah,
the most having it together. He walked and talked with, we would probably say, Christophany in the garden, and had a sinless, unbroken communion with God the Son, and man, he chose poorly.
Yeah,
and it all crashed down after that. Fast forward to David, and we see, starting off so strong, even late into his reign, just doing well. Maybe not late into his reign, late into his life, mid into his reign, he's doing so well. I think of when, he is still kind of is right before Saul dies, and they come back and their town has been burnt, and they're like the men are going to turn on them, and just his humility there, and his patience with his men, and his not getting caught up in the circumstances of the horizontal. He immediately goes vertical, prays the Lord, gets insight. Hey, we're gonna go, track these guys down. So like the testimony he has, and of course we all know his fall.
Yeah.
With Bathsheba, then lying about it, covering it over, murdering Uriah, and just you think from heights down to the depths, and then from there, Bathsheba's son Solomon, young man, dedicates the temple, builds it from David's, gathering of supplies. But in all of that, is visited by the Lord, and the Lord asks him, make a request of me, and he's like, I want wisdom, I want insight, I want understanding and knowledge. And God's like, you could have asked for riches, you could have asked for power. I think of the two things. Maybe it was it riches and power?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
And then he's like, but you asked for wisdom, and I'm going to give all three to you. And so then we see like this kind of meteoric rise of Solomon and these building projects, and his renown. Like the Queen of Sheba comes over and people visit him. He's got this vast empire. And then again, he gets caught up in lust of the eyes, idolatry, bringing in foreign ladies, foreign gods, and you see this fall. And so a common question he had from there, I think that's all he listed. Did you listen to
I'm looking at his PowerPoint. That's what he had.
Yeah. So the common question he had, what was the thing that they lacked? Because they had head knowledge. They had this understanding, but they failed to act on it. And so then he went to Proverbs 2, 1 through 8. Did you want to read that for us?
Yeah, I will read that. It starts out saying, "My child, listen to what I say and treasure my commands. Tune your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Cry out for insight and ask for understanding. Search for them as you would for silver. Seek them like hidden treasures." Then it goes on in verse 5. "Then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain knowledge of God. For the Lord grants wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He grants a treasure of common sense to the honest. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity. He guards the path of the just and protects those who are faithful to him."
That's good. And so his point in all this was the action verbs.
Wow.
That wisdom is truly putting knowledge and understanding into action. And so he highlighted several different action verbs there. Listening, and he had, I thought he just did a great job of giving some different pictures, because he was talking about, I was in back-to-back labs when I was in biology. He's like, let me tell you, by the middle of that first one, my listening turned to just hearing, if I was, at all, because it just all blended together. But listening is an action if you're doing it, if you're truly listening. And
I will say this, the next word he talked about was treasuring, and that's where the analogies kind of broke down. They just weren't as good. I didn't understand. It made me less, I understood less.
Hey, don't listen to him, Clayton. I thought your next analogy was perfect. I mean, I was like, this guy needs to be a regular teacher at CBC, because he was talking about treasuring his commands. And like, if you think of anyone treasuring something, you think of Gollum or Smeagol treasuring the ring when he found it, and he was like, "My precious."
I was waiting for that impression.
Yeah. And so, I mean, great analogies. Tuning your ears to wisdom. This has this idea of attunement, or if in music, you have to all get to a standard pitch. You all tune up to some standard so that we're all playing together. And obviously, in wisdom, we're all tuning up to God's standard. And so it's making those adjustments so that we're in line with him. Concentrating on your understanding, crying out for insight. I don't know if you remember any of the.
Yeah, he kind of paired, I think, cry out and ask together. I think some of that, maybe not self-explanatory, but we get that picture that you're searching for, looking for it, and then search and seek, maybe paired together, that if you're going to treat wisdom like money, like I work for my money. Like I put in time and effort, and it's like, man, do we put in time and effort for understanding wisdom, that kind of thing? Because we need to. If you don't, that's where you make mistakes. If you do all of those things, verse 5 says, then you will understand what it means to fear the Lord, and you will gain knowledge of God.
Yeah, and I appreciate the point he made here too, because I grew up where it seemed like pastors were wanting to soften this fear of the Lord. It's like a respect, and it's not. It is respecting. But I think there is a genuine.
I do too.
Fear that you should have, like
why doesn't it say just have a healthy reverence, but let's not go crazy?
Right. You read through Hebrews 12, like he's going to chastise the sons that he loves. You read through the end of the upper room discourse, and where he's like, I'm going to prune you, and so that you can bear more. Like so, those are things that are going to be brought into our lives, and if they're, you can be pruned and not be sinning, but oftentimes, no one's sinless. So there's always places where God can find, ways to help more and more sanctify us. So
no, I think that's good, and I think that we all, if we love something, we run towards it. We fear something, we run, towards it or away from it too. It's like, what do you fear the most? Because sometimes we don't fear consequences or fear our bad actions at all. Or, we fear God less than we fear not doing these things. It's like we all have that. So I did like that, and he tried to substantiate that claim with a bunch of different examples of maybe people not having any fear of the Lord with how they acted.
Yeah, and I just thought this. I kudos, Clayton, because I thought this was a good application of, his point was holiness is sometimes hard to understand, and maybe pictures of God's holiness in the Old Testament are the best, because we know God of the Old Testament and God of the New Testament are the same. So he brought up these three different pictures. One was Nadab and Abihu, and they don't get we don't really know if they did it on purpose or they just slightly missed the formula for the incense, or they're maybe like trying to be show their creativity and God's going to bless it. But God's like, no, I gave you what you're supposed to be burning. This is a strange fire. Man. Boom, they're both killed.
So are you telling me they weren't trying to speak in tongues or something? Because John MacArthur wrote a book called Strange Fire, and it's I'm just kidding, but yeah, that's
Oh man, yeah, no, I don't think they were trying to speak in tongues. And then Uzzah, is it Uzziah? Uzzah?
I think it is Uzzah.
Uzzah, this guy that is walking along the cart.
I feel for this guy,
and ignorance, but it wasn't bliss.
No, man, just stepping in and trying. I can see myself doing the same thing. Like, I want to protect God's holy ark from touching the ground.
Right. And was he in the line of priests, or was he just like a bystander?
That's even a better question.
Right. Because if he was in the line of priests, there's some culpability. Like, you should have read up and known how to support.
That's
how
true.
To transport this. Because it wasn't on the back of a ox cart.
Because I can think through like stakes obviously much lower, but elementary school or sports or something where your coach says something 100 times, like, don't leave your feet to make a pass or something. Or like when you do something in basketball and I find myself knowing not to do it, but I do it instinctively, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done it, but I know better.
Yeah.
And it's like, man,
because got to get rid of that ball.
Yeah. You're trying to do that, or you're not disciplined.
I'm going down. The ball has to leave my hands.
I can shoot, but I'm like, I would do this a lot in basketball. I would drive. I would like go up and pass it. I felt like I was pretty good at it, but my coach was always like, don't, sometimes it works out, but there's like these little sayings that you do, and it's like, just be disciplined. I'm sure in football you had a lot of things like do this, and people just weren't always disciplined. You have to like drill that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You don't, like when you're doing pass blocking as an offensive lineman, you always have to have a foot in contact with the ground. You cannot, because if you say, like, if you get your feet off the ground, that defensive lineman can basically, you've lost all your leverage against them.
And it probably seems easy in the moment to like, let me just like get a step here or pull my weight into this.
Or I'm going to really explode in and jump into the person. And we'd run drills over and over and over again. and you get tired of the drills, but it's like we
You
do
need
it now,
so
that
has to be your instinct.
It has to be
Of,
instinctual, physically instinctual. Yep.
That's great. And then he closes out talking about Moses.
Yeah.
I don't remember the illustration off the top of my head. Like, you just listen to it.
I was going to let you roll with it. So Moses, he's dealing with this complaining people. And if you've ever been around children a long time, you know that complaints can rise. And eventually he gets fed up and, he strikes the rock the first time to bring water. But then the second time he's just supposed to speak to the rock. And again, like, what's going through your mind, Moses? Are you mad? Are you not paying attention, what it is, but he strikes the rock again. And I've heard people say, striking the rock was like a picture of crucifying Christ, and Christ is not going to be crucified a second time. I don't know if that's what it is, or it was just disobedience. Or maybe God just was like, Moses, you don't need to be going into the promised land anyways, but he disobeys God. That's the point. And God says, because you disobeyed me, you're not going in the promised land. So that's God's holiness on display. And oftentimes his holiness catches us off guard.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this was what you expected. We just thought you. Yeah.
We presume mercy all the time. It's we just know God's going to be merciful. Right. Or, it's like, oh, yeah, great examples connecting that. And so he brings it back to, you got this knowledge, and we have so much knowledge. He's like, but action must accompany that knowledge. He's going to go, and then he's going to jump to the New Testament because...
That's right. Why not?
Why not? Got to go. And he goes to the New Testament wisdom book of James, chapter 1, verses 22 through 25, which says, but be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. If he looks at himself and goes away and not once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. I've heard this a lot. I think you taught on this one time and you kept something on your face or something in a Sunday school. It might have not been you're expositing this, but it was maybe an example for something. And you came in with a mark on your face and acted like there is nothing.
Yeah. Was it on my face or maybe on my coat or something?
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah. There you go. But this is a through line all throughout Scripture. Knowledge is great, but man, you got to have more.
You got to do it. That's right. It's good.
Easier said than done. Oh yeah, even talked about some wartime analogies, that kind of thing. Oh, and was like, man, we look at the New Testament and it's a battlefield. It's it's a pursuit. It's more than just coasting through life and being zapped with wisdom. Talked about Ephesians 6, 2 Timothy 2, talking about us as soldiers. 1 Timothy 1, wage the good warfare. 1 Timothy 6, fight the good fight. His slideshow keeps going and going. I keep forgetting. I was like, man.
I don't think he covered. I think he must have skipped over some of this because I didn't remember hearing all of that. So.
Action in the middle of wisdom. That was a really great encouragement. Then we kind of rounded out the rest of our time talking about some hermeneutical issues with Proverbs. Maybe not issues, but things to keep in mind, and some theological big picture.
Well, I just want to say he got a round of applause after teaching.
He did.
So I was like, if I guest teach, would you think people would give me a round of applause too? You think?
Yeah, that's funny. You should do it and just be waiting. Just wait up there and be anything you guys are forgetting?
Maybe I can help you out a little bit.
Yeah, start the slow clap. That's
seems like a Michael Scott thing to do.
That's pretty amazing. So well done, Clayton. Hope to hear more of that. He's been on a hot streak, giving his testimony than this.
I missed his testimony because I hear it's recorded, so I need to go back and listen.
Yeah, it's recorded in a couple places.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we've got probably the actual recording, and then Anita Marshall sat on the front row and recorded. So we got the surround sound.
I heard that he was sitting there. He was like, and next thing I know, this phone is right there getting me recorded.
So you could either listen to the up close and personal audio. I guess he was mic'd up too, so it's all good. We'll round out in the next few minutes. We talked about, the good news is we did talk about some of these hermeneutical questions, problems, maybe some challenges in Proverbs. It can seem disconnected. We did talk about this. I used this example in Proverbs 20. Where the first verse talks about wine, and the second about a king being angry, the third about laziness, the next one about quarreling, and it's man, is there any rhythm? And that's why it's important to couch it or to frame it within chapters 1 through 9, because it's going to hit a bunch of stuff. And I do think, I don't know if you have thoughts on this or not, but the more I was looking at it, there are some through lines in the collections of Proverbs. Sometimes some of these are hard to see. They seem kind of random, but the more you spend time in it, you can see some, even though not all of them are so nice and neat. Like some of them are kind of neat where, oh, these are more negative or these are positive, but some of them are just kind of bouncing around.
There was a time where probably for 2 or 3 months in a row, I did I'm going to read the corresponding date. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I got to move on. I was like, I don't know. So I think if there was someone whose personality was given over to that and they really just dug deep into it. And what I would have to do is I'd have to start like cataloging it and tagging scriptures. And I got this new software.
Sweet.
It's free.
Yeah. What is it?
Obsidian.
Okay.
And a lot of people use it for like story building, like a character world. It's like they're writing a book because you can tag. It almost makes it like a Wikipedia.
Okay.
But I was thinking you could use this for Bible study too, because that's
pretty cool.
You can like create these little things. Like if you wanted something on wisdom, and then you were reading like, oh, this verse is on wisdom, and then you could just list those verses and you could link to them. So then
that's pretty cool.
It would make a pretty good thing. But so if I were going to do like an in-depth study of Proverbs, I'd probably pull out
something like that
and start sorting it, and then you can see like, okay, here are all the verses that relate to wine. Here are all the verses that relate to overeating. Here, whatever it happens to be. So
that's pretty good. And a couple of resources. I said this at the end of the class, but I would recommend, like, again, I said this guy's name, Bruce Waltke. He's awesome. He's got videos where he's teaching like a seminary class or something, and those are pretty accessible. And you can just zoom into whatever part of Proverbs you want to listen to. He's got like a very technical commentary that I would recommend if you're going to like spend like a year in Proverbs, or you're like, I think it's made if you're preaching through Proverbs, you have like some familiarity with the original languages. I was reading that, I was like, man, a lot of this is tough, but he does a good job of trying to catalog and sing some of that stuff. I came across another commentary.
It's written or video?
It's written. It was like maybe written like in the 80s or something, the commentary. He does have a lot of what his commentary is in video form if he's teaching through a class to seminary level students. But it's like super well done. It's like multiple volumes. And he's like, it's like one of the modern go-tos from like the last, 30 years or so, maybe more than that, I guess, 40, 50 years that are really good. Another one I found that was small that's really good is by a guy named Derek Kidner. I think he was like a pastor in Great Britain or something, and he wrote this like in the 60s. But he wrote this for layman, which if you write it for the layperson in the 1960s, it's like a little bit, it's like a sweet spot where it's not too hard to read, but it's challenging, but it's concise. Right. And he tries to organize things, but in a little bit easier to understand way. And it's like so great. And what these guys, what they point out is as you're reading Proverbs, even these Proverbs chapter 10 through 29, there even is a little bit of a progression. Even if you just look at Solomon's Proverbs, in 10 through 22, like his first collection. In 10 through 15, you see a lot of purely antithetical proverbs. The righteous do this, the wicked do this, black and white, total contrast. But then once you get to chapter 16 through 22, you get into some better than proverbs, and it's more nuanced. It's not saying the righteous are going to be wealthy or prosperous. It's saying it's good to be righteous and not have a lot of material possessions rather than unrighteous and be rich. And you start seeing more of that principle at more realistic life. So you even kind of see that flow in Proverbs. So I think it's good to just know the direction it goes, how it's structured, because I think that helps us just understand this book a little bit better.
That's good. And then, so through there, as you've been studying Proverbs, you're talking about major themes. Have you ever been in a class or a sermon series where they did teach it topically and picked up on some of these themes, or no?
I've been in not like a Sunday morning thing, but maybe it was like a Wednesday night or like a Bible study or something like that, and they would kind of pick different themes. And I saw a lot of this organization from Kidner because he does such a good job of compiling all of these things. And but I haven't recently. Have you sat through that?
It was when I was probably in high school.
Oh, yeah.
That we had a Sunday sermon series through the Proverbs, and they picked some of the Proverbs. This guy happened to believe that consuming alcohol was a sin.
Amen.
I'm obviously clearly getting drunk is a sin. I don't think mere consumption is a sin, but he hit those. The ones, wine is a mocker, strong drink is whatever that one is. He hit that one pretty hard a couple times.
Oh, yeah. So, there you go. But looking at some of these, main themes. Well, the overall worldview of Proverbs is that God is sovereign. I picked out a few of these Proverbs where it's like, the lot is cast into the lap, but no matter it's gambling or it seems like it's chance.
Right.
God's really behind that.
God only needs one chance, one ticket to help you win the lottery, right? Yeah, because it's not chance for him, it's chance for us, but it's he knows.
No, it's so good. The proverb about a king's heart is like a stream of water. These kind of proverbs are all scattered throughout. Sovereignty of God is affirmed, even though there's a lot of ask of you as an individual to make these wise decisions. Creation order is in there. Proverbs has a lot of different proverbs that kind of hints at this life after death. Maybe it's not super explicit. A lot of people look at look at the Old Testament and are like, we really don't read about a resurrection until Daniel 12. But you look at a lot of Psalms, a lot of Proverbs, and maybe we're reading into it with what we know. But it seems like it's more than just what they're saying, or it seems like something's out there, right?
Like that there's going to be justice in the next phase and stuff like that.
Like there's something to expect in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think keeping that long horizon in mind is helpful with Proverbs. And then a lot of these topics are hit over and over again. We talked about wisdom versus foolishness, the sluggard, friendship, power of word, family, life, and death. All of these things, we kind of took a little bit of time and looked at words. There's a lot of proverbs on how powerful words are for good and evil.
It's Joe's favorite.
Oh yeah, I know. I didn't say that one because I was like, everyone. I should have said that one. Everyone knows. He's saying that one a lot. That life and death, and the power of the tongue. That's great. But even though words are powerful, there's some proverbs that say, mere talk doesn't get you anywhere. You got to do something, or you're not going to make any profit. Talked about what I liked about looking at these are what do wise words look like? Well, wise words are honest. You don't just flatter people. They're few. That gets a lot of us. Where the more you talk, it's like, why am I talking? They're timely. Proverbs give so many practical application of how do we speak well, and so many other things well, where it probably would be good to do a 6-week series through some of that stuff. Yeah. So that was a brief overview on some hermeneutics, some theology that Proverbs hits, some stuff from Clayton. It's hard to talk about Proverbs in 2 weeks,
Right.
But try to hit the high points, try to hit the structure, and hope people can read Proverbs on their own. Because like you said, everyone reads Proverbs, at least a little bit. It's like knowing just the flow of it, where things are structured. I think that helps us understand it a little bit better.
I think that'd be good. And you've mentioned some of these sources. Bruce Waltke, is that how you pronounce it?
Bruce Waltke, yeah. He's like, I don't know. He was born in 1925 or something. So I think he's still alive. I don't know. He's not actively teaching now. A lot of his videos from 10 or 15 years ago where he's still an older man, but he's sharp and he knows his stuff.
Derek Kidner.
That's the English guy. Really good.
NASB study Bible.
Or really any of these study Bibles. I'm like, man, if you just especially with Psalms and Proverbs, they at least give you some of that context that maybe you're missing.
Right. I was poking at Zach because he has an ESV study Bible written down, so I switched it to NASB.
ESV study Bible, that's the one. It came out my freshman year in college, and so it was so heavily pushed by the school I went to. Everyone was getting the ESV study Bible.
Right, yeah, that's good.
And then the Bible Project, I think I've said this before, I don't agree where they land on everything. I think sometimes they don't make enough of Scripture, but I think they are great at contextualizing Hebrew, ancient Near East kind of context.
If I would say to go to them for anything, go to them for context and maybe helping see the big picture of a book, but not some of their deep down theology. Because I'm well, that's a little scary.
They're a little scary. They know it's I find this as a trend in people who are super into ancient Near Eastern literature. I think it warps you a little bit where you just count Scripture just in that context versus Scripture driving everything.
Right.
Because they'll say things I don't think this makes you not a believer or anything, but it's they're Jonah was a parable, not a real. It's they say these little things that just kind of chip away at. Yeah. And I'm man, I don't know.
Jesus talked about Jonah.
I know, and they even say that, but they're but it's I think some of these guys they can get too much in that. So I agree with Michael. Great for context. To me, most helpful when it comes to setting the stage, but maybe not the best for every little theological detail. So that's going to be it for Proverbs.
Right. So what I've learned is if I do what a proverb says, guaranteed to get that in my life.
Take it to the bank,
I'll blame you, Zach, if it doesn't work, right?
Well, the beautiful thing about wisdom literature, I know we did say Proverbs are patterns, they're principles. The great thing is that you look at Ecclesiastes, you look at Job and it's like, man, you can do everything quote unquote right. And you look at the fallen world and it doesn't always work out that way. And I think it's important to get that balanced perspective and see the exceptions to the rules, even knowing that, there are quote unquote rules, but doesn't mean everything follows that exactly 100% of the time.
Yeah. And while, you owe me something and I owe you something, like we owe each other to treat each other in love and to fairly, and for me not to rob you and for me not to murder you, those types of things. We have those types of duties and obligations. God doesn't owe me anything.
Yep.
Right. So it's like God can, anything that I get short of hell is grace.
Yep. And I think as we continue this series, we'll see this emphasis on what some people call the retribution principle, or a deed consequence relationship, where Proverbs paints, even like Clayton's going back to, I was going to make this connection to Adam. Patterns kind of, Adam, the garden's kind of like Proverbs. Everything's perfect. Things are going to work out great, but we're in exile. We're in a fallen world, and that's kind of Ecclesiastes and Job, and we get that big picture. But I think it's neat that all of these things are together as wisdom letters, because you're right. God doesn't owe us anything, and for us to presume so is man. And so Job and his friends, and even author Ecclesiastes, they're going to look at this deed consequential relationship and say, man, this is how it's supposed to work. Like, what gives? Like, clearly, this is the driving principle. Job, you're not doing that, his friends will say. So that's why you're... And Job's like, I am doing that. But it's like, man, you're missing the point. It's not about that. God's wisdom's above that. So, well, something to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. But that's our take. Thanks for listening to Take Two. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.